Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down Heston Kjerstad's return to the major leagues as he had a strong performance at the plate in the Orioles' most recent homestand against the Cleveland Guardians and the Texas Rangers. We're going to look at how Kjerstad could fit in with the Orioles down the stretch, question whether or not he's a possible trade candidate as the team tries to upgrade itself between now and the trade deadline at the end of this month, or if he is indeed a long-term part of the Orioles' plans. That will be on tonight's episode a little bit later on. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. And as we like to do at the top of every episode, we want to welcome a new member to our Patreon community, and I will turn it over to Bob to do the honors.
Yeah, I want to thank Matt Fagan, Fiegen, if that's how you pronounce it. It's a tough one, for signing up at the AA level hours before we came on air. So really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the content.
And that is great timing because we will be releasing our top 50 prospects update in just a few days for the month of July to all paying members of our Patreon community. So you're going to want to sign up to get that if you haven't already. And before we dive into tonight's topic, I just want to welcome back Nick, who was well rested after vacation and ready to stun Baltimore Orioles fans with his ridiculous antics. Nick, how are you feeling after your week off?
Week off, vacation. If you call going to the beach with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old for a week a vacation, sure. I'm well rested, ready to go.
Sounds like you're more tired than ever, and I get it.
I've got hashtag not sponsored, but if Dewey Beer wants to sponsor us, this is some of the best beer I've had in a long time. So at least I've got this going tonight.
Yeah, if there's any Calmine lotion companies out there that want to sponsor as well, I could use some. Thanks.
Playing her for the second time in recent weeks. You had the bad back a few episodes ago. Now you got poison ivy. You know, you're just the Austin Hayes of this podcast, minus the low walk rate. But that's a discussion for another night. And
that hurts. That hurts worse than the poison ivy.
We'll talk now about Heston Kjerstad, who was recalled by the Orioles before their most recent homestand and went on a tear at the plate. He appeared in 6 games, starting 5 of them, and went 7 for 16 in that span with 2 home runs, including a crucial grand slam in Saturday's game against Texas, along with 2 doubles, 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, plus an intentional walk. So that gave him as many walks as he had strikeouts over that span. And Kjerstad comes to the majors really with nothing left to prove at AAA. He has hit well there since joining the Tides for the first time last year. Now the question is this going to be the chance for him to get regular at-bats in the majors? And Nick, we'll start right there. Kjerstad gave us a glimpse of what he can do at the plate when he's locked in during this most recent homestand. And without his performance, the Orioles might not win that series against the Rangers. So how are you feeling about the way he looks at the plate right now?
I just think this past weekend against Texas was a good example as to why it was okay that Kjerstad went down again earlier this year. And I'm probably going to be a little contradictory in a way when we talk about Coby Mayo in the next segment. But there are pros and cons to both sides of this argument. A lot of people I know were really frustrated when Kjerstad got sent down. Even more frustrated when he got sent back down to AAA and just started raking once again. I think that first at bat after he got sent down, then he hit a home run or something. I don't know. He took off. But anyway, it's like, yeah, AAA pitching isn't great. It's not good. You hear all the time about that gap between the AAA and the major leagues is widening, and it's tough to find quality pitching to test yourself against in AAA. But Kjerstad only had 800 something minor league at bats. coming into this year because he missed 2020 because of the pandemic, 2021 due to the myocarditis, and then half of 2022 because the injury right at the end of spring training. Yeah, he very quickly made up that time and shot his way up to the major leagues last year. But I didn't see any harm in him terrorizing AAA pitchers for a few more weeks until the team felt like they were ready to give him regular, pretty much every day at bats. And I'd say the 2 home runs, 8 RBI, just as many walks as strikeouts in a weekend series against Texas is pretty solid. And if the plan is for him to take over Santander's role next year, which we'll talk about later on, I think he's in a great spot. And I think him being back down in AAA was good for him. And hopefully we feel like we use the term springboard a lot recently. I kind of like it now. Hopefully this past weekend was that springboard for Kjerstad and proof to himself, first and foremost, that he belongs in the major leagues. Because a confident Heston Kjerstad, I feel like is as we've seen in AAA at least, is a pretty dangerous Heston Kjerstad.
Yeah, and I'm going to take this question a route on to this question the way Austin Hayes took a route on that triple that Cowser would have easily caught for a flyout last night. Yeah, with Kjerstad, look, everyone knows I love Eno Saris, I love Rates and Barrels, but they were talking about him today, or maybe it was yesterday's episode, and people do this. They mention his age when it comes to projection for him, and it's easy to forget. But like Nick said, he missed 2.5 seasons because of stuff completely out of his control. So to me, I take his age to level with a grain of salt. It felt different right away as soon as he was caught up this time around. And I know Kyle Stowers was sent back down because they needed an infielder when Juan Soto ran into Westberg. Nick Maton came up for a couple games, and that gave them a chance to bring up Kjerstad when Maton got DFA'd again. But it just felt like he was being handled differently right away. Batting 5th, facing a lefty in the lineup, just putting him out there more than the last time he was up. And he's taken advantage of it. He's hitting doubles into the left center gap. That was nice to see last night. A grand slam on a ball right on his hands. And he might not have the best exit velocities, but he's got decent exit velocities combined with just the ability to barrel up everything. I call him the Barrel King if you listen to our dailies, because he hits it hard at a good launch angle and all over the field. Yeah, I think he's here to stay this time, and I think he's going to – he might have just priced himself out of another team's price range when it comes to the trade deadline coming up.
Yeah, and I think it's worth going there next with Kjerstad because we are coming up on a trade deadline. It's less than a month away now, and we know that the Orioles have clear and obvious needs when it comes to their pitching staff. When you look at the Orioles' depth chart on paper, Kjerstad makes sense as a trade chip. He's somewhat blocked, depending on your perspective. He has a lot of time at AAA. We know that there are strengths to his game as well as some limitations, especially on defense. So if you could get something for him, it makes sense. But this is also a former number 2 overall pick in the draft, a guy who ranks inside the top 5 of our top 50 list right now, and pretty much a consensus top 100 prospect in the game. So he's not someone that you should give up just for the sake of trading. So how do you guys see him in the conversation, if at all, of prospects who could be traded?
I don't know how you guys feel about this. I feel like the Orioles are in a this is a big time luxury for the Orioles, I feel like, because there are a lot of different options. And even though I felt like Sunday night, it was another instance of the world falling apart, and Mike Elias just quietly goes to bed happily, not trade. Another day goes by, he doesn't get to trade away a prospect. Life is good, even though trying to look up the schedule here, and yeah, the Orioles won 2 of 3 from the Rangers, and they're in first place in the AL East. So the world is not falling apart.
3 of 4, actually.
3 of 4. Beach vacation brain. So they won the series against the Rangers. They're in first place. Things are going pretty darn well. Everyone has pitching injuries. Everyone has injuries across the board. The Orioles are not in a unique situation, other than unique in that they're really good and winning a lot of baseball games. But you're in this unique situation where Santander, you could bring him back. You could bring Ryan O'Hearn back, and Kjerstad does become tradable. Like I think a lot of people have kind of moved Kjerstad into this untouchable range after this past weekend. I don't agree with that. I mean, even Jackson Holiday is not untouchable. He's tradable for the right price as well. But like, I think Kjerstad is movable if that's the plan. But at the same time, it's July 1st. There are some teams who may, at this right now, they may not be sellers. Other organizations may not view them as sellers, but in 2 weeks, a lot can change and they may become sellers. You got to be patient and see where this market really is at in a couple of weeks. Still got a month until the trade deadline. So the Orioles can be patient here. They don't need to make a move right now. They can let Kjerstad, Santander, and everybody get their at bats. And if the right price, I do think Kjerstad has now entered this phase of like, you better come offering a big time player or players if you want Kjerstad. But the Orioles don't have to trade him right now. They can sit back and wait. And if they feel confident that Santander, they can reach a deal with Santander and bring him back, Ryan O'Hearn's like $3 million, $3.5 million, $4 million next year. If they want to run it back again next year with the same guys, they can do that. If they feel like Santander, they've had conversations with his reps. They know where the Santander stands right now. I wouldn't blame Santander if he wants to go test free agency. This could be his one shot to go get that really big bag. Go get it. Like, I hope he gets it. I hope he's earned every penny he gets on the free agent market, if that's the route he takes. The Orioles can say, okay, we lost Santander in free agency. Like, thank you for your services. You're an amazing member of Birdland. We'll remember you forever. Go get your money. We've got Kjerstad right in the wings. Like, it's just this luxury position they're in where what do I think happens? I think Santander walks in free agency and Kjerstad is the natural replacement. But at the same time, like I said, if the right deal comes calling, I think if you're Michael Ash, you still make that move and you do move Kjerstad. But I don't know, a lot of different ways this could go, and there's still no rush right now.
Yeah, and I think hopefully people understand when we say someone's untouchable, we mean like there's not a trade that's going to be offered that you're willing to accept for them. They would have to make you an offer you can't refuse, and it would have to be so over the top that it's basically the same as untradeable because it's not going to happen realistically. But Kjerstad, I do believe, is the highest prospect that could be traded before this deadline or this offseason coming up. And I think, like Nick said, the Orioles are in a perfect spot here between cheap option that's going to be picked up for Ryan O'Hearn going into next year. You're going to offer Santander a qualifying offer. He either accepts it and you have him for another year at a reasonable rate. Great. If he doesn't accept it, he can go get his money and we get a draft pick and Kjerstad takes his place. And if he does accept it and you have O'Hearn, Kjerstad, and Santander still, maybe you work out a big trade in the offseason then with Kjerstad involved, or you find someone that loves Ryan O'Hearn and what you've turned him into, and you can trade him. But options. It's what the Orioles love, and they've got plenty of them right now. But yeah, like if I can't even imagine Garrett Crochet. Just if the Orioles are going to trade for Garrett Crochet, Heston Kjerstad's probably in that deal. But like we talked about, I don't even know if that's the best fit. But there are scenarios where I could see them still trading Kjerstad, but the more he stays here and performs, like I think it's going to be a little harder for them to give him up when you got 6 years of control left on him after this year for cheap. And he's a major league caliber hitter that can easily play right field, DH, maybe first base if he gets a little bit better at it. But yeah.
Yeah, there's any number of routes that the Orioles can go, and I agree that I kind of view it however you want to define untouchable. I think that there's three players that probably fit into that category: Samuel Basallo, Coby Mayo, and Jackson Holiday. If you want to look at that next tier of, they might be moved, but it's going to have to be a pretty high price. Kjerstad's the first name on that list for me because not only is he your logical successor to Santander if Santander does walk in free agency, but he has a chance to actually make this team better down the stretch. I'm not concerned about Colton Cowser. I think he's going to be fine the rest of the way, but it's clear that in the last couple of weeks, he's needed a little bit of a reset. You're going to have to live with a lot of the ups and downs with Austin Hayes and Cedric Mullins, and Santander didn't really start hitting until the beginning of June. So having that other bat there is going to help the Orioles immensely down the stretch. Even if Kjerstad is not your everyday right fielder, I think that he can be a big boost to this lineup.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think the defense is. I think we talked about this before. The defense is. We haven't seen a super long stretch of it in the major leagues right now, but I think the defense is very comparable to Santander in that, like, it's people are going to constantly knock Kjerstad's defense, but I think it's going to be always this situation of it's actually not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. Like, this would be a lot easier. I would say, yeah, I'm not moving Kjerstad at all if left field wasn't going to be a bit of an issue for him. Like, that is one thing that we can say. Like, how confident would we feel with Kjerstad playing a lot of games out in left field? Not that confident. But like he's, and like Bob said, like the barrels, I remember looking at the data last year, like his exit velos weren't anything like eye popping, but you see the raw batting practice power, and I felt like it didn't really match up to like some of the data we saw last year. And I was like, all right, is Kjerstad like a 15 a year home run guy who maybe walks a good bit, gets on base at a good clip? But then you look at like his barrel rate, his ability to consistently launch angle plus EV, 95 plus miles per hour. That is like, was at least last year. I haven't looked this year to check, but at least last year in AAA was like unmatched compared to his peers down in Norfolk. Yeah. And it's like, that's going to lead to a lot of home runs, especially that lefty bat playing in the AL East. So like, it's great. I think if he is a replacement to Santander, then awesome. Like you said, the cheap option for the next 5-6 years, he's going to put up the power numbers. Could he give you 30 home runs a year in the major league level? Probably. And the defense, people are always going to knock the defense, but it's better than what I think a lot of people are going to give him credit for. So
I agree on the defense. He makes it look a little harder. When he's running, he's going all out. It looks like it's a little uncontrolled, but I do agree. I think it's Santander level, or at least could get there, where it's like he's going to make the plays. He at least knows how to take the right route to the ball, unlike the guy I'm taking after this year. But real quick, when it comes to Colton Cowser, I think because he got off to such a hot start, had such a great spring training, people forget he's a rookie. This is his first year other than like 40 at-bats last year. I mean, he's going to have his ups and downs. I know he's been struggling a little bit, but he's still got a 777 or something OPS. I mean, it's pretty darn good for a rookie who can give you great defense at all three outfield positions. Sorry for the tangent, but yeah, I'm super happy with Kjerstad and what he's doing, and I just hope he continues to take advantage of the playing time. Yeah, like Zach said, even if it's a little bit more sparing where he's starting 4 or 5 times a week instead of mostly every day, I think that's fine. He's a great power bat off the bench as well. Yeah, as usual, the Orioles are in a great spot, and despite fans and media claiming you can't just hoard your prospects, you got to trade them. You're trying to win a World Series. Well, I think I trust this front office to play for the now and later at the same time.
Yeah, go ahead.
I see that triggered me. I see that. I still see that all the time, right? Zach was right. I'm in the mood. I'm ready to go. Like I still see this comment all the time. Like, Michael Elias hoards his prospects. He's not going to trade anybody. Why hasn't he made that trade? He traded Joey Ortiz and DL Hall for Corbin Burns just a couple of months ago. Like, he traded a potential all-star, well, now third baseman looks like in Milwaukee, but regardless, like a potential all-star player. And Hall, unfortunately, the injury bug is continuing to bite him in Milwaukee. And you hate to see that. At least it's his knee and not an elbow or shoulder or anything right now. But like, he traded 2 major pieces for that ace. Like, I have all the confidence that if it comes along, that deal comes along where he has to move some big time names, maybe it's not Mayo or Basayo. AJ Preller can wheel and deal and keep a lot of his top prospects. Mike Elias can do it too. Like, he will make. I have all the confidence in the world that as long as the right trade comes about, because remember, these trades are very, very difficult to agree to. If that trade comes about, I have no belief. I have all the belief in the world that Elias will pull that trigger and make that deal, because like, this is the year. The Orioles are in prime position to win the World Series. This organization knows that. Corbin Burns is here for possibly 1 year. they're going to take advantage of that.
Oh, and for the record, remind me when tax season comes next year. I bought full access to the baseball trade values for the trade simulator with the trade deadline coming up. So business expense. If you got any trade questions, hit me up. Let's do this.
Yeah, Nick, I'm glad you said that because even the Sunday Night Baseball telecast was bringing that up. And I'm like, aren't you guys supposed to be covering the game that's being played on the field right now and not trying to analyze how the Orioles are going to move all these prospects? One way or another, it's going to work itself out because it already has. This time last year, we were trying to figure out how you're going to fit in all these infielders. We're still talking about that. But to Nick's point, Mike Elias did trade a guy who I think at the bare minimum is going to be a solid major leaguer for a long time to come in Joey Ortiz, and possibly, an all-star once or twice, maybe more in his career. Joey Ortiz is going to have a really good career. That was not a small price to pay. And I'm sure it's one the Orioles would like to have not paid, but they knew that they needed Corbin Burns. They knew he gave him the best chance to win now, and he's going to do it. And honestly, I know that I'm going off on a separate conversation here, but there's not a Corbin Burns on the trade market right now. There's absolutely not.
No, there's really not, especially with Luzardo just back on the injured list. Obviously, you could still make a trade for him, but I feel like it'd be more for next year and the year after. We've talked about Crochet to death. Yeah, the best guys out there are guys like Eric Fetty, Cal Quantrill, of all people, for the Rockies. Kikuchi with the Blue Jays. I don't know if they're willing to trade with us, but, there's these mid-tier arms. Unless someone out of the blue, like Tariq Skubal, if you blow them away I don't know why they would trade him because I feel like they're close to competitive now. But, I don't think that guy's really out there. I don't think there's a high-end guy that you would even need or want to trade a Basayo or a Mayo for, let alone Kjerstad. You see people tweeting, if you want to win the championship, you're going to have to trade one of Basayo or Mayo. It's like, what? Why? Just because? For the optics? I don't get it. But yeah.
So a good question here from Sim Contributed. I'll take this one. Then I've got a question for you guys to wrap up this segment. Is a likely scenario the trades will be the return the O's can get for a package/packages that do not include Holiday, Basayo, Mayo, or Kjerstad. So, in other words, I think the Orioles may be targeting deals where they don't have to give up one of those four guys. What are your thoughts?
I think you could get Eric Fetty, and actually, as I'm talking, let me pull up this trade I put together today for Eric Fetty, Michael Kopech, and Tommy Pham. I had us giving up, dead air. Dylan Beavers. Nope. Damn it. I lost it. All right. But basically it was like Connor Norby, Justin Armbruster, Alex Pham, and Hudson Haskin. Something like that. Like you can, one good prospect, whether it's, Connor Norby, Dylan Beavers, one of those types in the middle of our top 10, plus a few guys lower on the list. I feel like that's pretty much the level of trade you're going to see this deadline.
Yeah, I think when we did a couple weeks ago, when we had listeners kind of submit those trade ideas and talking through those and thinking about it more, like it makes a lot of sense right now. Like you, even with all the injuries, Wells and Bradish and Means and even Danny Coulomb, like all these pitching injuries happening, I still feel like you can greatly improve this rotation and even bring in some assets that could help you out next year, stabilize things where there's going to be even more questions, and not give up Mayo, Basayo, Holiday, and like even Kjerstad right now. Like this is a very deep farm system, and it's not the idea of, you see a lot of trade proposals that's like let's trim all the fat and trade it away for this stud for Tariq Skubal. Like it's not, you can't trade Hudson Haskin, Armbruster, and Connor Norby and like
I
other
found it,
blocked
by
guys.
The way. It was Norby, Brandon Young. That was like a decent pitcher. One of the Rule 5, one of the Rule 5 eligible guys, whether it's Young, McGow, or Bernovich. Norby, Young, one of John Rhodes or Hudson Haskin, or one of Alex Pham, Justin Armbruster, Keegan Gillies, insert guy there.
Yeah, like you can move these guys a large number of prospects, and your farm system really isn't hurt. Like you have Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Judd Fabian. Like, could you move one of them? Yeah, because both guys have very high ceilings, play very good center field. Like we talked about them before. You've got a lot of duplicates. You've got a lot of depth at other positions where you can bring in good talent. It's not going to be a Corbin Burns type move unless there's this surprise player, the surprise trade that Elias is able to pull off. But you don't need to bring in another Corbin Burns. You just need to like strengthen up the back of this rotation, and you can do it with solid arms, like above average, well above average, solid arms that are going to be assets to you in the playoffs. And you can trade hefty hauls for these guys, and your farm system, they're not going to be the number one farm system in baseball, but like you can still bring quality arms without trying to just shed off all the fat and like trade away your waste to other organizations. Like there are legitimate prospects like Norby, like a Beavers, like either Fabian or Bradfield. These are studs. You probably not go trade Bradfield because you just drafted him, but like these are studs that the Orioles have that, you know, you could say they're blocked, but there are a lot of guys like that in this organization. And at the same time, you don't have to make a lot of these big deals either. Like, I don't know.
And I think it's worth putting into perspective. The Orioles farm system is at a level that a guy like Connor Norby, who in most lists is probably in the 7 to 10 range right now, it's probably a top 3 prospect in at least a third, if not half, the farm systems in baseball. He's probably a starting second baseman on a lot of teams right now. So that's something you really want to keep in mind as you look at the Orioles farm system. And I'll wrap here with this. We'll have the second top 50 prospect update for our main feed in August. That's the one we do right after the draft. Will Heston Kjerstad be on that list? And if not, will it be because he graduated and is still an Oriole? He graduated and was traded, or he was just traded?
I'm going to say it's because he graduated. He's still an Oriole and he's graduated. I've said many times since the summer that I want Santander to be an Oriole for the next couple of years, but I also realize that he could probably get a nice hefty bag in free agency, and he's probably going to want to test that. This is his one shot. And I think I said before the season started, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but before the season started, if you would have asked me, okay, just the Orioles only get to keep one guy. Again, this is before the season started. If the Orioles only get to keep one guy between Cowser and Kjerstad, who would they keep? I would have said Kjerstad. For whatever reason, I just felt like this organization truly believed that Kjerstad could be an integral part to this roster moving forward. And I think based on the actions we've seen the organization take with him this year, I think that is proving that point right now. Not that they would want one over the other, but that Kjerstad is going to be an integral part to this roster. And I think they're setting him up pretty nicely to be Santander's replacement if that ends up being the case. So I think he graduates because he's an Oriole for the next couple of years.
I still would take Cowser just because the defense mostly, and man, he hits the ball way harder, not way harder, but a lot harder than Kjerstad. Obviously, if he could get the barrel rate Kjerstad had, we got a 40 home run hitting center fielder, but I digress, as Bob Haney would say. Yeah, I think he will be graduated from our list, and that will be a fun list to put together with him and potentially Cade Povich graduating, plus new draft picks. That's going to be fun. But yeah, I think he's going to stay in Baltimore, graduate, and yeah, that's my answer.
And you can look forward to that list in August. But if you want some top 50 updates in the meantime, sign up for our Patreon community, because our top 50 update for the month of July is going to drop this week. And without giving too much away, I will say that there are some interesting changes from last month and from more recent months on there. So you're going to want to check that out. We're going to be back later this week to talk about Coby Mayo and what his future holds as he tears the cover off the ball at AAA. We're also going to dive into Fangraphs' new top prospect list for the Orioles farm system. In the meantime, though, you can check us out on our many social media channels. We're over at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube. You can also find some written content from the three of us over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, This is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by Bet Online and part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down Coby Mayo, who is putting together the best season of his professional career to date, down to AAA Norfolk, and offensively really showing that he has nothing left to prove against AAA pitching. On tonight's episode, we're going to break down how and when he could fit into the Orioles this year, whether he does fit into their long-term plans, and what the immediate future holds for him. We're also going to break down Fangraphs' updated top prospect list for the Orioles farm system. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And in our most recent episode, we broke down Heston Kjerstad, who was recently recalled by the Orioles. So if you've not had a chance to listen to that, go back and check that out after you listen to this, where we're going to talk about Coby Mayo, who since really the middle of last year has probably been a consensus top 3 prospect in this system. We've long known Mayo's traits as a prolific power hitter who has gradually improved his overall plate approach every season since making his professional debut in 2021. And that's reflected right now in his numbers at AAA Norfolk. Entering Monday's action, he was hitting .308 with 17 home runs, a 152 WRC plus, to go on to .382 on base percentage and a .631 slugging percentage. Between Norfolk and Aberdeen this year, he completed a rehab stint at Aberdeen back in June. He has 20 home runs on the season. He entered this year as a player who we thought could help the Orioles out during the season. He had performed well during a stint at AAA to end last year. He looked good in Major League Spring Training, and he's basically checking every box offensively, not just in the raw stat line, but in terms of the batted ball data, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. Bob, I will start with you. What stands out to you about Mayo right now?
Everything. I think we tweeted out a couple highlights on defense, some plays he made on defense the other day, which were absolutely remarkable. Defense looks like it could be good enough to put his bat in a major league lineup. He's hitting the ball hard and often. He's not chasing. I think that article from Baseball America just pushed me over the edge, where every day he's not in the majors starting tomorrow is a day that the Orioles are worse at the major league level than they were the day before. So, yeah, I don't know if there's any prospect in baseball more ready to make his major league debut. And not to say he wouldn't struggle when he first comes up, but he is going to be a stud for a very, very long time. One of the best hitting, if you just take away defense, take away everything else, just hitting, one of the best hitting prospects to come around in a while, in my opinion.
Yeah, we can talk about the defense. I want to talk about that article. I'm in the same boat in that we've been Coby Mayo fans for a long time. There are a lot of people who've been Coby Mayo fans for a long time. He hits the ball incredibly hard. The highlights are beautiful. They're glorious. We know what type of hitter he is, but like when you dig deep into the data and really get a more full picture of who Coby Mayo is as a hitter, and this Baseball America article, I like Bob's wording there, putting him over the edge. It did it for me as well, because like this is. Go back and read it. Like, go on our Twitter, go on the Discord, go to baseballamerica.com, go read it, sign up for a subscription, do whatever you got to do to read this article. It's Eli Ben Portat. I hope I'm saying your name right, Eli. He does actually, I think it's every Monday he puts these types of articles up on Baseball America, these StatCasts breakdown of prospects. He takes like 4 or 5 and kind of highlights something each week. But he acknowledges, like, he writes a lot about Coby Mayo, but it's like, look at this EV, look at this monster home run. It's a lot of that. But he put together this piece, and it was a much bigger breakdown, and it was glorious. And there are nice, colorful, beautiful charts in this article to help break things down. And I kind of summarize it here to try to do so in an audio format. I feel like I want to put the graphs up on the stream, but I don't want to get in trouble because it's behind a paywall. But he's got this chart, first of all, that shows the areas of the strike zone, the entire zone, where Mayo swings. And it is pretty heavily concentrated within the strike zone. He doesn't chase. Like, he chases very, very little. You see this like hulking, it's like piss missile hitting phenom, and you just expect like swing and miss and the strikeouts, but you don't get that with Mayo. He's spitting on 4-seamers even in the zone. Down in the zone, he won't swing at them. He feasts on fastballs up in the zone. And this is where, like, a lot of guys, this is where they struggle. It's in that same article. It looks at Jackson Holliday, does kind of the same deeper dive a little bit, and says, like, this is Holliday, according to Eli, to go off on a small tangent here, he believes that Jackson Holliday is going to figure it out. And a lot of his numbers look great in AAA, and this is working for him. There we go. If you're watching live on YouTube, Jackson Holliday is going to figure it out, no doubt about that. But one thing that Holliday is struggling with is like fastballs up in the zone. Like, this is what Mayo lives off of, though. He doesn't chase breaking balls pretty much at all out of the zone. But if you leave a breaking ball over the plate, he crushes it for a home run the majority of the time. Like, he's just sitting back and toying with these pitchers until they get frustrated or lazy for a second, and then he unleashes like that knockout uppercut punch. And there are 2 other articles in that graphics in that article where he breaks down Mayo versus each pitch type, and then against lefties and righties, and compares those to the MLB average. I thought those were very helpful as well. Versus righties, Mayo chases below the MLB average. His average exit velocity is 90.6 miles per hour, which is almost 2 miles per hour harder than the MLB average. His 90th percentile EV is 106.6 miles per hour, which is 2.5 miles per hour harder than the major league average. Against lefties, he crushes them. He refuses to chase. His chase rate is way lower. He makes more contact. His average exit velocity goes from 90.6 to 96 miles per hour, which is 7 miles per hour above league average. His 90th percentile EV is 109.5. Like, he truly is. This isn't orange colored glasses. This is, Coby Mayo, let's drool over him. This is like, truly, he is an elite hitting prospect. He's still got to prove it at the major league level. That's a given. But if he does, like, can you imagine inserting that sandwiched in between Gunnar and Adley and Kjerstad and Mountcastle even? Like, Eli said it in the article, like, once Holliday figures it out and Mayo's up, like, you are looking at what could potentially be a truly historic infield in Baltimore. Not just a historic Baltimore infield, but a historic infield in terms of like the history of Major League Baseball. And I agree.
Greatly said. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, I think everything with the bat is really well documented to this point. Baseball America did an excellent job. And as we talked about earlier, go check that out. If you're not a subscriber to Baseball America, subscribe to read that article and all their other great content over there. We can, slice it and dice it with the offense anyway, and it's going to tell the same story, which is that Coby Mayo is an elite all-around hitter at the AAA level, and he has the potential to do that at the major league level. Now, the one thing I know that we get pushed back from our listeners on sometimes is the defense, specifically the throwing errors. And we know that this was something that the Orioles were working on with him. He was using a different throwing motion this year. The early returns in spring training about that were very good, but his error total at AAA has been driven by throws to some extent. So do you guys think that the defense at this point is a reason to keep him down in AAA, or is this something that somehow works itself out if you bring him up to the majors this summer?
Well, for the record, he has 7 errors on the season. It's not like he's got 25 errors and is throwing the ball all over the place every time he touches the ball. And 3 of the errors, I think, were like from the first weekend of playing. So yeah, obviously I think the defense is overblown. You saw those highlights. I think Ramon Arias made a nice play over this past weekend, and someone somewhere made a comment. See, that's why he's there and not Coby Mayo, because you need someone that's going to make plays like that. Well, yeah, it was a great play, but Coby Mayo can make that play too. Like he's got good hands. It's not like he's known for dropping the ball, not getting to the ball, and his arm is a cannon. And yeah, most of his errors are on throws, but I mean, when you bring this kind of bat and just say you're slightly below average, I think that's being as fair as possible. I think he could be average right now, but just say he's a little bit below average with the glove. The way he hits, it more than makes up for any of that. And I don't know. I think also once he gets to the majors, he's just going to get better and better on all facets of his game, defense, offense. When you're with the major league coach every day, you have cleaner fields with better hops. It's just incredibly overblown.
Yeah, at least 2 of his errors were because he slipped in the dirt. Like it's not his fault. My only argument is to the defense. That is another thing too. It's a lot of people who have never seen him play that say he can't play third base because they just parrot what other people hear and say. With Mayo, my argument is, why is he not playing first base at Norfolk? Why is he not playing the outfield in Norfolk? He's learning he's practicing there, but he has yet to play a game in the outfield. He's played 9 games all year at first base in Norfolk. He had almost 30 games, I think, last year in Bowie at first base. And I thought we'd see him play more first base this year down in Norfolk. I thought by now, I know Bob said this before, as soon as he makes that first start in the outfield, it's like he's coming up to the majors. Why is he playing every night at third base down in Norfolk? If the team felt like
he can be a third baseman.
Yeah. If the team didn't feel like he couldn't play the position, they would be moving him around like they did with Connor Norby. I feel like with Westberg, that was more like we want this bat in the lineup. We need to get him up. He can do it. With Mayo, it's like you've got that 70 grade arm, an incredible arm. If they had questions about the defense at third base, that they didn't think he could improve it and be a viable third base option, then yeah, they'd be using that 70 grade arm out in right field down there at Harbor Park. But they haven't one time. That's my argument. I don't see any reason as to why he can't become an adequate third baseman at the major league level. And my thing, I don't know if I said this on the show or not, but before the season started, I was fine with letting Ramon Arias start. Like, that's a veteran. The glove is trustworthy, but you are going to reach this point in the season where what Coby Mayo brings you offensively greatly exceeds any dip in defense. You're going from Ramon Arias to Coby Mayo, and you're going to have to make that move. And I think we've reached that point where what Mayo could potentially give you with the bat, whatever you lose in defense, it doesn't matter because he's going to help spark this offense.
He's undeniable right now. It's July 1st. We have 3 months left in this season. He needs to get his feet wet at the major league level because he's going to be a weapon in the playoffs for the Baltimore Orioles this year. And I'm just getting chills thinking of the next 6 years, hopefully more, of Gunnar Henderson and Coby Mayo on the left side of an infield and what they can do offensively back-to-back in a lineup. Dear God.
I'll say this about Mayo's defense. My opinion is that I've always thought that Mayo's footwork is underrated because everyone looks at the size, 6'5", 230, and thinks, oh, well, he's going to fill out and he's going to move to first base. He's pretty nimble. He's got good footwork over there. He can get to some balls you don't always expect him to get to. At this point, it's really just a matter of improving the throwing accuracy, which I know is more difficult than I just made it sound. But for anyone that's concerned about that and who thinks that it would somehow hurt the Orioles to put Mayo out there, a couple of things I would bring up. Number one, the Orioles don't have to put him at third base if they feel like his defense is lacking immediately. They still have Jordan Westberg there. And you have Jorge Mateo to play second base. And I know that Mateo's bat leaves a lot to be desired, but he does a pretty good job over at second. His speed adds something to that lineup. That gives you some flexibility. That gives you some room to work with, that if you don't have Arias there, you still have other options that Mayo can DH some nights. And I fully agree with Nick. If the Orioles didn't think that Mayo could play third base in the major leagues, he would probably only have, he's got 43 games at Norfolk there this season as of Monday night. He might have half of that if the Orioles didn't think he could play third base, because the rest of his time would have been split between right field and DH or first base. But instead, they're still running him out at third base. I think that they think he can play third. And look at how far Gunner's defense has come in the last year and a half. I would not have necessarily predicted this time last year that Gunnar Henderson would not only be an everyday shortstop, but one of the top contenders for a Gold Glove award at year's end. And yet, it's exactly where he stands right now. If the Orioles could do that with Gunnar Henderson, why can't they do that with Coby Mayo? And maybe that's not a question that you answer in 2024, but certainly by this point in 2025, I think you can get there.
Great point. I was about to bring it up. Remember, Gunnar had way bigger throwing issues than Coby Mayo does. I mean, way bigger. Like, again, strong arm. He was a guy that was throwing it all over the field. You could see, like, if he could just get a little more under control, and especially when he was playing third base early last year, I felt like you saw it even at the major league level. But he's made huge strides. Like you said, I'd be surprised if he's not a Gold Glove finalist and potentially win the award this year. So, yeah, just excellent point.
And it's the throwing errors. Like, you've also, I don't know who's been the primary first baseman down in Norfolk, but like right now it's what, Garrett Cooper. I think tonight was the new guy. He dropped, I don't know, based on the camera angle, I know he had a throwing error tonight, like right before we came on air. Garrett Cooper dropped the ball, but I don't know if like that was catchable. Like, if that's Ryan Mountcastle, he gets up to the major leagues. He's got a Gold Glove caliber first baseman in Ryan Mountcastle up there that can help save him. He saves a lot of other guys up there too. So, like, and speaking of Ryan Mountcastle, like Ryan Mountcastle, I remember watching him in Norfolk. The guy didn't know where to put his feet at first base, and now he is a potential Gold Glove first baseman. So that's another example of the Orioles taking these athletic infielders and improving that defense. Like, I don't know. I'm so sick and tired of the Coby Mayo can't play third base. Like, watch the game. Just watch him play, and you will think differently about his game at third base. And again, if the Orioles didn't believe it, he wouldn't be there. And you call him up to the major leagues now, it seems like this entire lineup is going to be an all-star. So, like, there's no all-star break for this team. Gunnar Henderson is going to do the home run derby. I wouldn't be shocked if Major League Baseball is like, we want Adley versus Gunnar in the home run derby. They're not going to do that. It'll be one Oriole, but it's just Gunnar. But like, Gunnar's going to be in the home run derby. He said a month ago how tired he is, or Brandon Hyde was talking about how tired he is. Ryan Fuller saying we don't see that. Yet this guy's going out there every single night. Gunnar's going to need some time off. Westberg's going to need some time off. This is also still a very young team. Like Westberg, Gunnar, Mountcastle's a veteran now. This is still a very young infield. And so if you bring Mayo up, Mayo is not going to play every night, but he doesn't need to. He can be put in this lineup, help spell guys, give them their breaks, come in and be a brand new energy for this lineup. And he can play third base. I don't see them putting him at first base, but third base, DH, you get him in there, move things around. That's where, and they've got the machines. Like, Mayo's not playing tonight. Oh, well, you're going up against, I don't even know if they play Cleveland again, but Tanner Bybee just came to my mind. Don't ask why. We're going up against Tanner Bybee tonight. Mayo, you're not playing. Guess what? They got a machine that can mimic Bybee's fastball down to a spin rate and everything else. Like, okay, he takes hacks in the batting cage against that machine, against Tanner Bybee. He gets his defensive work in the pregame, and he sits in that dugout and he picks the brain of Ryan Fuller. He picks the brain of Santander after an at-bat, or Gunnar after an at-bat. And he learns, and he grows, and he develops. Like, there's room for Mayo to make this team so much better down the stretch.
And one point I just thought of, it goes back to Kjerstad in our last episode, and with Mayo as well. Even the games when they're not starting the game, they're still available later in game. Talk about some impact bats that you can bring in late in games. I mean, it speaks for itself.
There's always a question of how Mayo would fit onto the roster. And I'll put this to the two of you. How do you put Mayo on the roster tomorrow?
Bye-bye, Ramon. The Ramon Empire was destined to fall. It fell in history, and unfortunately, it's got to fall, and something better will be built behind it. I don't know where this metaphor is going, but yeah, I think it's Ramon Arias. Maybe you can find a training partner, but it's probably going to be have to be after you DFA him, just like Mike Bauman situation. So yeah, and I think unfortunately, yeah, he's a veteran, solid player. Could probably start on a bunch of teams out there, but this is realities of life. If we have these types of issues now where we have too many good players, and it's just what has to be done.
Yeah, I agree. He's expendable now, and Mayo's up. He's going to change his offense. I truly believe that. So,
yeah, make that unanimous. I think that's how you fit him on the roster. We've been waiting for Arias to hit. It hasn't happened yet. And when you look at the numbers, the defense has been down in the last couple of years. So that to me is the obvious move. I also, for reasons we got into in the last episode, just don't see Mayo getting traded because the Orioles have a farm system that's deep enough to make a move without dealing their top tier guys. And that's something that we're going to focus on coming up here in a moment with our discussion on Fangraphs. Bob, you got something for us?
Yeah, this was one point I wanted to make, actually. When people say you got to trade Basayo or Mayo to get an ace or to get whatever, teams don't trade their elite talent. They just don't. And yeah, they might be our second and third best prospects on most rankings, but they're still top 10, 15, 20 prospects in baseball, and they are elite talents, and they're not going anywhere. Teams keep those guys. They trade the Norbies of the world. Unfortunately for him, I like Norby a lot, but they trade the Dylan Beavers of the world. They don't trade the Coby Mayos and Samuel Basayos of the world. That's my last thing.
We have a lot to think about between now and the trade deadline.
We do. And while we're trying to figure out how to fit more Mayo into our baseball diet, I've also been fitting more Magic Mind back into my morning routine. Answering the question, like, how can I get through this day with enough energy, is a lot easier to answer than how do we fit all the prospects into this Orioles lineup. But look, you guys know Magic Mind reached back out. You guys are drinking it. I'm drinking it. We're doing the 3-7-14 challenge, where we're taking one of these mental performance drinkable shots each morning along with our daily coffee. We're not eliminating the coffee. We need that. We like that. We enjoy that. But we are adding Magic Mind to that morning routine. We're 3 days in now, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm already seeing the positive effects. We all have a lot of on the table: kids, full-time careers, summer vacations, like we talked about at the beginning of last episode with small kids. That's exhausting. But after adding the Magic Mind to the morning routine, I really do already feel myself being more productive with that clear, focused mind. These things are packed with mushroom nootropics, adaptogens, all the vitamin C and D you need for the day. I know the ingredients are natural and safe compared to the energy drinks I used to rely on. And instead of giving up my morning coffee, like, Magic Mind helps extend the life of that coffee. And we're, again, only 3 days into this challenge, but I'm already feeling better. I also feel good knowing that Magic Mind was created with a scientific advisory board of doctors and medical researchers. The ingredients are organically grown, and best of all, 5 cents of each bottle sold is donated to mental health charities that help U.S. homeless communities. So double bonus when you're drinking Magic Mind each morning. I encourage all of you listening, join us in this challenge. Magic Mind is 100% refundable for up to 100 days after your purchase, so there's no risk in giving this a try. You have a limited time offer you can use now that gets you 48% off your first subscription, or 20% off a one-time purchase with code OnTheVerge20, that's 20, at checkout. You can claim the discount at magicmind.com/ontheverge. You won't regret giving this a try. Claim your 48% off subscription with On The Verge 20 at magicmind.com/ontheverge.
And Magic Mind helping us dive into this list over at Fangraphs. Prospects 1 through 45 this year. Eric Longenhagen joined by Travis Ice in putting together these reports. And as is the case every year at Fangraphs, very detailed analysis of every player ranked on their list, from Jackson Holliday at number 1 to Gene Pinto at 45. You can get this article over at Fangraphs in its entirety for free. It's not behind a paywall. We're not going to step on their work entirely tonight, but this is one of our favorite lists done by another outlet to analyze each year. Usually we have it, if not by opening day, then earlier in the year, but the Orioles falling more towards the midseason publication this year. And I know that we each kind of have our takeaways from this list, but Nick, I'll start with you. Once again, an interesting, well researched, well reported list. What jumps out at you?
Yeah, it's a fun list because Eric is not afraid to be different. And one thing that I do, of course, like every list, you can nitpick it, you can challenge it. There are things that stand out that make you say, "What are you thinking here?" But at least like he backs up a lot of this with like hard data. He compares that data that he's getting, that he has access to, and it's even down to the DSL guys. He's pulling up, batted ball profiles and data that is awesome to read some of these nuggets, especially on the lower level guys. But like he takes that data, he takes the player's profile and then compares that to major league guys and previous comps and says like, can this succeed at the next level? And that's what I like about this list. It's definitely some interesting names on here. The Brandon Young hype train is for real. Apparently, he's up number 10 on this list. We could talk about a little bit more about Brandon Young when we dive into our top 50 update later on tonight. But I think one thing that matches up well to, spoiler alert, to my personal top 50 that I submitted for our list. A lot of pitchers high on this list. A lot of very young pitchers high on this list, which I love seeing. We keep saying you're the pitcher, and it looks like some of these national outlets are starting to agree a little bit more.
Yeah, Travis, ice, baby. I gotta say, the most notable thing to me is that Matthew Etzel is nowhere on here, not even the honorable mentions of other notable players. That's kind of strange to me. Maybe just an oversight, but yeah, very interesting. Like, I love some of the aggressive takes here, like Michael Foret up at 17. I love it. That's awesome. But at the same time, like, where is it? There was someone that was really low. Trace Bright at 32. I know, obviously you can pick any list. I like when these lists come out because it definitely gives something to talk about for good or bad. But I enjoy more reading the descriptions and the breakdowns than just looking at the list and saying, "Oh, why is this person here and this person there?" I think if you read what they say, you could see that you're probably not as far off as you may think just at a glance. So I'm glad this finally came out. I know Eric is definitely stretched pretty thin at Fangraphs being the prospect guy. So yeah, what do you think, Zach?
What always jumps out at me about Fangraphs lists, and it's true this year, is that when I look at the raw ranking initially, how did they come up with that? And the perfect example for me this year is Matt Horvath down at number 25. He's much higher on my personal list. I've had him kind of in the 12 to 14 range on my list all year. That was true when he was off to the slow start. That's true after a really hot month of June. And what's even, what makes this situation even more of a head scratcher at first for me is that he's 3 spots behind Tavian Josenberger, who I like, but I have in the low to mid 30 or upper to mid 30s on my list. So he's not even inside the top 30 of mine. But when I read the two reports, I agree with the assessments of both players. I agree with the assessments of their strengths and weaknesses. I agree with the assessment of their risk. And this is where it's important, I think, to distinguish that Eric and Travis both had input into the rankings because it notes they don't agree on Horvath's projection on defense. Eric sees him more as a possible outfielder, whereas Travis sees him as an infielder. And I don't know how that affected the aggregate ranking. I'd be curious to learn about that. But I think Horvath is better than the 25th prospect on the list. But when I read the report, I think they're generally accurate in how they see him as a prospect.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the other one of note, like the top 15, 16 is pretty normal, other than Connor Norby's all the way down at 19, which seems strange to me because he's consistently put up great numbers at AAA for 2.5 seasons now and has showed pretty well at the major league level. But that could be a defense thing as well. But what do you guys think about Norby being that low?
I think it's the defense. Like when you look at this list, it's very clear that I'm trying to pull up his blurb real quick. But like Zach mentioned with Horvath and Josenberger, I think there's a note in Josenberger's blurb, like they view him as this kind of defensive replacement off the bench at the major league level as he develops. And with Horvath, like if you think he can be an okay outfielder and definitely not an infielder, like he's already got a questionable hit tool. Like I agree. I get why you'd rank him that low. And I feel like Norby is a product of that as well. Eric has been brutal on Norby's defense since he was drafted. And so if he thinks he can't play second base and then you move him to the outfield and it's like, is he really going to be that great of an outfielder? Okay. I think that's why he gets knocked. And the strikeout rate, I think that was something else that he really highlighted here. And I think there was some discussion of that even in Discord earlier today. Like Norby striking out a 30% clip, just above 30% clip in AAA so far. Like, is that something to knock him for? Or is that just like, it's baseball, it's 2024, and you think the Orioles like aren't that concerned? From an outsider's perspective, though, from a national guy covering this list, I could see why you would drop him that low. I think it's too low, but like it's defensible at least a little bit.
Yeah, we know he was pretty harsh on Kowser's defense. Turned out to be wrong on that one, but yeah, I think as far as the Orioles are concerned, from what I've heard, they don't really care about the strikeouts. If the strikeouts come with the damage when you make contact, I think that's what they would prefer, but who knows?
Yeah, I think the defense definitely dings Norby, and there's also a note in there about the underlying data not always being as impressive as the pure stats at the plate. I know that for myself, I think that Norby's an adequate second baseman. I don't think he's going to be a perennial Gold Glove contender over there, but the defense is, in my mind, passable enough when you pair it with the bat that he'll stick there every day. But, when Eric was on this show a few years ago, he talked about how his standards for shortstop defense are really high. And I think that my own personal interpretation when I look at his reports is that they're high for players up the middle. So he's probably going to put a tougher grade on a player who, like Norby, has to stick up the middle, in this case, second base, on his defense because the defense is subpar and there are questions about the bat, then yeah, he is more of a 15 to 20 prospect rather than a top 10. Do I agree with the ranking? No, but again, as Nick said, it's defensible.
Yeah, but it's like Bob said, read the blurbs, like take the list for what it is. I know it's fun. It generated some conversation and a little bit of buzz. I feel like some Orioles fans just like Fangraphs, nope, not reading it. And then other people are like, it's July, like this is out pretty late. Like, okay, we know who the prospects are now. I get that, but like go through it and read these blurbs though. Like there's a lot of confirmation and a lot of things. That's why I enjoy these national lists so much, especially this one that's coming out later and chock full of these like critical like data nuggets. It's confirmed. It's made me question some things about my own list, which is good. I definitely disagree in major areas, but at the same time, there's a lot of confirmation in this list and in these blurbs of guys who are like, I've been seeing this, we've been talking about this, and then Eric's like, well, here's the data, and it's proving this. Like, and then just some of these interesting nuggets, like Samuel Basayo, he calls him like gear-wearing Rafael Devers. Like, I'll take that. And saying he had plus power projection, and his peak exit velos and hard hit rate are already plus on the big league scale. And he's doing that as a teenager in AA. Like, that's fun. Creed Willems hit a ball 116 miles per hour this year. Like, that's fun. And to see him as a top 30 prospect in this system, there's some guy, and to see some guys like even Armbruster. I know, I know, but even Armbruster, it's like he's adding velo, and that's something to look at. Like that's a sticking point. Armbruster hasn't been good this year, but there's a good point to look at that I'm going to look at going forward. And 6 shutout innings with no walks, 5 strikeouts against Charlotte last time out. Like Eric notes in his report, this lack of control he's experiencing this year, if that's just a blip, like there's still a chance Armbruster could be a contributor at the next level, even if it's just as a reliever. But like little nuggets like that, what can we watch for moving forward with some of these guys? Things like that I really enjoyed picking up in this article.
Well, and there's a lot of good data about players at short season levels too, which we know is hard to come by. Whether it's
Mhm.
Miguel Rodriguez, who actually makes the main list. I've been impressed by what Rodriguez has done so far this season in the FCL, but Eric kind of put some things into context. There's something there with that bat. The defense behind the plate leaves something to be desired, but there's definitely something there with that bat. And then even some of the players who are in kind of the honorable mention categories like Enyudis Mordan, Andy Fabian, Juan De Los Santos, some guys that we've talked about off and on this year. Definitely worth checking that out. Before we wrap this part of the show up, though, was there anything else that jumped out at you guys?
I would love to know where he would put Etzel. He was in the Orioles organization.
Yeah, that is a good one. That's a pretty glaring omission. Also, Luis Almeida not on the list and gets like a secondary shout out on the rookie level sleep. No, the young infielder section. Braylon Tavera again. I don't think he's ever been on this list. Maybe except like when he first started. He does put an Oswaldo Cabrera comp on Aaron Estrada, or says like there are scouts who liken Estrada to Yankees Oswaldo Cabrera. That's fun because last year feel like in the DSL we're just like this kid hits a lot of singles and maybe some doubles and steals some bags, but now we're seeing some pop. But it's interesting that like some of the international guys are fun and highly ranked, but others like these big dollar guys, Almeida and Tavera, not on the list, and technically not even on like the secondary list down there at the bottom. Just interesting.
And quick shout out to Scout the Stat Line, who had their top 100 hitting prospects they came out with out of the guys that haven't debuted yet. Obviously, Mayo and Basayo high up there, but Matthew Etzel, number 50 overall, according to them, and Aaron Estrada, number 65.
We'll go now into our final segment of the episode where we shout out players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 prospects list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or was there something interesting in their stat line that we want to note. And I'm going to go back to Nick to start this one because he has a hitter who used to be pretty firmly inside of our top 30 and is actually on Fangraphs overall list and now healthy, showing a little bit of a resurgence.
I forgot for a moment we were doing the segment. I have Reed Trimble as my bat. And I put him on here because he didn't crack our top 50 update that we're going to do. I tried to sneak him in there at 49 on my list. He didn't crack the overall top 50. Going back to Eric's list, I feel like he was pretty high on Trimble coming out of the draft, which is why he's hanging around. But there's good reason to keep following Reed Trimble because like he's hitting. Where is this at? This doesn't include Monday night's game, which he did hit a home run before we recorded. So he has a 905 entering Monday, a 905 OPS in Aberdeen, more walks than strikeouts, up to now 11 extra base hits in 23 games. And it was actually, Bob made a good point on one of the dailies this week. He's never been caught stealing in his career, which is a fun stat. He's like 26 or 27 for 27. I don't know. He's healthy. He's finally healthy. He got drafted in 2021, didn't play, but a couple of games draft year. The last 2 years, he's had two major surgeries and injuries, so he just hasn't played. And he's playing well. He's playing center field next to Enrique Bradfield Jr. tonight. Like I couldn't be more happy to see Trimble. I know before last season started, one of my bold prospect predictions was Reed Trimble is going to end 2023 as a top 10, 15 prospect. He ended like in a cast for like the second straight year. He's not going to get back up into that ranks, but he's healthy. He's still young-ish and intriguing, which is fun to see. And real quick, my pitcher is Nolan Hoffman. Hoffman having a resurgence in AAA, and I'm here for it. Last week, 5 1/3 innings, no runs, 2 hits, 3 walks, 8 strikeouts. If you go back to May 18th, Hoffman gave up 4 runs and walked 3 guys, recorded just 1 out. 3 days later, he gave up 3 runs, walked a batter, recorded just 2 outs. The ERA jumped from 3.65 to 8.10. Since then, he's pitched 17 1/3 innings, given up 0 runs with 27 strikeouts. 4 strikeouts in each of his last 3 outings, a lot of 2+ inning outings. I thought he was cooked, but it's a unique arm angle, and it'll be interesting if he continues to pitch well. Like, he's going to regress, obviously, because those are insane numbers over the last couple of weeks. If he continues to pitch well, like, does he get a shot at some point this year? And there you go, from Simpkin. Hoffman, before we recorded, got the save tonight against Durham, so still pitching well.
I will go straight into my pitcher, who is Brian Bautista, big right-handed pitcher down in the FCL, 20 years old, 6'3", 175. They have him listed as, and he's been hanging around. He pitched in the DSL in 2022 to a 4.33 ERA, was in the FCL last year, had a 3.60 ERA over 20 innings, and this year, 25 and a third, he's got a 4.26 ERA, 3.29 FIP, 30 strikeouts to only 10 walks. I just feel like he's going to be the next guy that, whether it's late this year or to begin next year, is going to be in Delmarva and opening some eyes. But I just wanted to bring his name up to people's attention ahead of time and get ready for that. Got to prepare. And on the hitting side, I have two guys in the DSL who, one is repeating the level, Luis Guevara, who still just 18 years old. Would have liked to see him in the FCL, but I guess with only one team there, it was a little bit harder. But he's improved on all his numbers from last year. Last year, over 160 plate appearances, he batted .318 with an .824 OPS, 133 WRC plus. And this year, 67 plate appearances so far. He's batting .327, and I don't think this includes today's game. So actually, I have the updated stats for him right here. He's batting .340 with a .934 OPS, 5 doubles, 16 walks, 4 stolen bases. His walk rate has increased from 17.5%, which was already pretty great, to 22.4% this year. ISO's up a little bit. Strikeout rate is down 0.1%, 14.9%, so that's pretty good. 153 WRC plus before today's games. So can't wait to see what he does in the FCL next year. I think he's going to be a guy on the come up, another middle infielder. And also just Elvin Garcia. This is one of the new guys. He plays third base, a little bit of short. Probably going to be too big to stick at shortstop. But 17 years old in the DSL, over 67 plate appearances, and he's batting, again, I got to switch to the updated, .370 with an 11.18 OPS, 7 doubles, 3 triples, 5 stolen bases. He's got a 204 WRC plus before today's game, 20.9% walk rate, 17.9% strikeout rate, 260 ISO without a home run. So clearly he's pretty fast with those triples. Just another intriguing infielder. Just add it to the list.
Always good to see the short season guys get a shout out, especially Bautista. He's been pretty solid this year. I'm going to go into my guys now, and I'm going to start with my pitcher, Lincoln Hensman. Hensman is fairly new to the Orioles system. And to give a little bit of background, he was drafted by the White Sox in the 4th round back in 2017 out of Louisville. Pitched in the White Sox system for a few years and reached AAA, but never got to the majors before being released last year. Then pitched most of the 2023 season in Indie Ball, the Atlantic League specifically. Then was with the Marlins at the beginning of this year, was with AA Pensacola before he got released by them at the end of May. He was pretty quickly signed by the Orioles and joined Bowie's bullpen. He had a rough go of it at first, but last week he pitched very well against Reading. 2 outings in that series. He pitched a combined 5 scoreless innings with 4 strikeouts against 1 walk, gave up just 1 hit, also earned a win in Sunday's doubleheader as well as a save earlier in the week. My hitter, meanwhile, is Douglas Hodo, who had an excellent series against Brooklyn last week for Aberdeen, going 5 for 13 at the plate with 7 walks, 5 RBIs, and that capped what was an excellent month of June for Hodo, who hit .262 and posted a .455 on-base percentage, thanks to the fact that he walked 19 times in 65 plate appearances. In fact, he walked as much as he struck out in the month of June. So greatly improving the walk to strikeout numbers, and the rest of the offense climbing up with that for Hodo in his second go around with the Ironbirds as he spent part of last year there.
Yeah. And I'm looking real quick. Hono's got 2 walks tonight, but Reed Trimble has also doubled and homered and walked. So he's got a 972 OPS. There's still time for you guys to update your list before we officially record our top 50 update.
And we're just moments away from doing that. So if you are a member of our Patreon community, in fact, actually, by the time this hits the main feed on all the for podcast, you will have access to that already. So go check it out. If you're not a member of our Patreon community yet, sign up today and you'll get access to the top 50 prospects list at the $5 and $10 levels. You will also receive bonus daily coverage from Bob and myself. We will be back next week at a date and time to be announced. We're not going to be on Monday night as usual, but we'll have details for you over on social media. And you've got multiple places you can find us on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by Bet Online and part of the Believe Podcast Network.